We're a group of Gen Xers who became aware of our neurodiversity later in life. Join us as we share stories, interesting topics, and talk to special guests. Welcome to Season 2 of This Is How My Brain Works.
Welcome, everyone, to another edition of This Is How My Brain Works, along with Krista, Michael, and Sarah, back from being on assignment. Welcome back. Today, we are talking about boredom and how that relates to ADHD and its effects. Let's do it.
Already bored, Michael?
This is so boring. That
It's
was the
already
most boring
bored?
introduction. I think
Jason's like,
this is an
thanks,
interesting
dude.
thing because it's like with a interest-based nervous system, or with like impulsivity and novelty being interesting or motivating, there's always something to think about. But then if something isn't exciting enough, we'll kind of tune it out. So if you're like listening to someone doing a presentation or something and it starts to get boring, I go right to doodling. I'll have to doodle to stay engaged, or I'm like off out to lunch.
Or you just yawned. I don't know if you were pretend yawning because it was funny, or because it was funny, or if it was a real yawn. But even if it was a real yawn, I encountered some research that showed that we yawn to get oxygen to the brain. And typically it's not a response because we are actually tired we are tired or sleepy, but it's not that we're bored. It's that we actually want to pay attention, much like your doodling trick. If you are starting to get bored, or you recognize that the dopamine, you're not getting the hit, so you give yourself this like side hit of dopamine by drawing, or for example, a side hit of oxygen that's gonna make all the other functions process in your brains and your bloods.
What comes up when you hear someone complain about being bored? It's irritating to me when someone complains about being bored.
I don't know if that's a big boomer thing. My dad used to say, yes, same with, I feel totally annoyed when my kids especially say they're bored, or anybody. And I say what my dad said. It's so mean.
Is it the same as me? Let me see.
It's so mean. If you're bored, it's because you're a boring person.
Yeah, only boring people get bored. That's what I used to say that
That's
too.
pretty brutal.
And I actually, and what I used to do for my kids in the summertime, which was the time, the apex of the boring conversation, is we used to make a schedule on the whiteboard that talked about, and I said, you must be creating more than you're consuming. And that will shift your boredom, right? And I used to always tell my kids, you need to and the other thing I used to always do is they would go, I'm bored, and I go, oh my gosh, great. That's when all the good stuff starts. Because I don't get bored. Like I mean, there's always, and it's not just because I'm a mom and there's always something to do. Like my brain can like hang out by itself. It can, I don't really, like, that's not a thing that I have. It hits my husband, my ADHD husband, really heavily. It hits my ADHD kid and me. It doesn't happen. My ADHD kid, oof. And in his boredom, he bugs everybody else. He's like, what do you want to do? You want to do something? Let's go do something. Do you want to do something? And I'm like, no, I'm happy by myself. What do you got to do? He's like, I got to do something. You want to do something? You want to do, like, what are you going to do? Like, he's the one who's like really.
So that's interesting because I think there are people who might be dependent on others for activity or for kind of motivation into something. Like, I think it feels like my son is a little bit more, he needs to have someone to do something with, I guess, unless he's like playing PlayStation or something. But then Margot she'll wander off, and I'll hear her talking to herself and creating things, and she's totally self-entertained,
Yeah.
What if you're both? I feel like, so everything you're saying, I'm both never bored, but I think it was trained out of me. But then I also think that to be bored is trained into us. And I imagine someone with like severe ADHD forced in the school system that we have that doesn't honor their, I think impulsivity is the wrong word entirely, that doesn't honor their spontaneity, both physical, mental, and spiritual. And by doing that, so I think I talked about this with you guys, the realizing I'm not argumentative. I just have this need to be understood and to understand. So ask a lot of questions. The same thing here. I think that our ADHD kids have almost internalized someone's supposed to tell me what to do, because if I do it myself, I'm going to make a mistake, break something, there's going to be a harm. So they get bored and they wait to be told. I don't know. Does that make
Oh my gosh, Sarah, I'm seeing that so much with both of both of my kids. I've had a lot of conversations and questioning around lately of like, you know, like they'll come in and they'll be like, hey, can I make myself some lunch? Well, yeah, it's lunchtime. Like, go make yourself some lunch. But they ask for permission. And I've always thought, gosh, have I been that strict of a mother that you have to ask permission to do something like that is normal? And I really don't think I have been. But there is a lot of permission, like, is it okay if they're not asking me to help them make the grilled cheese. They're asking if they can. And it's such an interesting thing.
Well, my kid would say in response to that to me, Mom, I was worried you sometimes have ingredients put aside for certain meals.
I hear that too. I do.
So that's that for that one.
That's
I
pretty
got to the
thoughtful.
bottom of why my kids were being so obsequious or like.
But that's actually just an example. It's everything.
Right. Yeah. No, I
They
know.
ask for permission for a lot of stuff that I don't know if I ever asked for permission for as a kid. So that's an interesting thing that you say. The other thing that I had happen just last night that I found really interesting is Cash came in at his favorite time to talk, which is approximately
When you're ready for
11:15
bed.
p.m. And he was like, he said, Mom, I just wanted you to know, I knew that because we have a teacher that he's sparring with because she has no patience for his ADHD at all, and sees it as excuses. She just sees everything as an excuse, and he has an F in this class right now. He's got 100s in every other class except for this one class, and it's so hard for me not to step in and say, one of these things is not like the other, and to get on this woman for this. But he came in last night. He said, I tried really hard. I did my homework ahead of time. I'm not waiting for study hall. I really want to impress her. I want to hand it to her and have her go like, oh, it's done and it's fully done. And I was like, that's awesome. He's like, I just wanted to tell you I'm really proud of myself. I was like, I'm proud of you too. And then he was like, and I can't go to bed because now the dopamine is kicking. And I just
Oh, cute.
yeah, and I was like, I thought, oh my gosh, it's so like he could not get to sleep after having done that thing.
Oh my God, yes. No, that's because everything else quiets down. And you can finally focus up on your thoughts. There's not so much noise and traffic going on. Rudy,
Yeah.
are we boring you? Is this boring?
Very boring. I'll tell you right now, for me, work is very hard because we're not out on the course. Can't go out on the course. It's covered with snow. And there's only so much I can do in the shop. And I'm constantly looking for things to do because getting bored. And I'll tell you, it's kind of brutal. I mean, we get in at 6, everyone sits around, we watch the news for an hour. We have coffee, we talk, it's fun. I mean, it's, we talk about whatever. And then I'm just milling around looking for things to do, and I've done it all. Like, I've done everything. I'm just waiting, like, for the spring to hit, where I can go out on the course. We're getting another snow, and it's brutal for me. It's brutal.
So that
I feel lazy, right?
It creates a stress response.
It does create a stress response, and I've been trying to, I thought, well, we do need to go out and look at the course daily, but you got to wait until 11 o'clock, right? I'm there at 6 a.m. And I think I'm just going to tell my boss, you know what? Whoever wants to go with me, I'm going to walk the course. I can't sit. I can't sit. I cannot sit still. And
Rudy, does it also hit at all? I mean, is this just like sort of physical, like that physical feeling of like, I just can't do this? Or does it hit like a self-worth thing. Because I feel like my husband
It's
has
not a,
that. Like,
it's
you're
physical.
paying me, I can't just be here and do nothing.
Right. I'm not the kind of person, right. You're paying me and I'm just sitting here watching the news.
Yeah.
I'm just sitting here watching the news
That would
and drinking
drive
coffee.
Greg bonkers.
None of us are doing anything. But it's kind of, that's the atmosphere. Everyone knows that in the winter, you know, it's time to sort of relax a little bit and you have time. And, you know, my coworkers sometimes are like, you know what, we need to go pick this up. Okay. And I'm thinking, let's get there and get back. I don't know why. But he's like, we're going to take the long way. You know, wink, wink. Because there's nothing else to do. So it's
Right.
like, you take the long way to get to, but even that to me is boring. You know what I mean? Like, I know it only takes a half hour to and fro. I don't want to take an hour and a half. That's boring. First, you know, it's just with the 80, and Michael, I totally understand. There's a sort of a paralyzation when you get bored and you're like, I've got to find something to do. But then you're paralyzed. You're like, what do I do? Do I do this first? And then all of a sudden there's like 6 things that come up and you're kind of in the same state, but the stress level is really high now because you feel like, oh, you've got all these projects. I guess I've got projects to do and how am I bored right now? You know what I'm saying? It's a paralyzation thing where sometimes I become paralyzed in what to do first or how to go about something. And it's sort of, it breeds a little bit of boredom because my brain is still not doing anything. It's running, but I'm physically not doing anything.
I get this way with Netflix or with things to watch. It's a and they actually have, Netflix has a word for it, and it's something about paralysis. But it's that idea of you scrolling through trying to find something, and you're not being, and you don't know what you want to watch, and you can't figure it out, and you either land on like The West Wing, which you've seen 500 times because you can just, you know what it is, and you don't have to think about it, or you turn it off. And so that to me is probably the most bored I get. Now for me, I go, oh, well then obviously I don't want to watch anything. I turn it off and I go read a book or I go find something else to do. So I fill it in with something, but I do know that sense of like, I could sit here and scroll for an hour and not find anything to watch. And that is a level of boredom and frustration that I can feel when that happens. But that's that's that same sort of choice paralysis. It's like, I don't know what I want. I want to fill this time.
I want a dopamine hit.
Yeah, there's too many choices.
Or there's like, yeah, what is that perfect thing to watch? Or what's the right thing for me to watch right now where I'm not wasting my time? And then ironically, you're wasting your time by scrolling.
Yeah, scrolling or trying to find it.
Same thing going into, I mean, when Blockbuster was a thing, it would take me forever to get to rent a movie. I mean, it's the same thing.
You remember walking the aisles? Oh, God.
Yeah. Well,
no, when I was young, my mother would stop. She would get off work. She would go to Blockbuster or to the grocery store because that's what they had them in the grocery store.
Redbox.
And no, before Redbox, like when there was actual videos in the grocery store. And on Fridays, they always had like 10 for $10. I don't know, some sort of like deal. And she'd come home with a stack of 10 rentals. Because we were a home of 6 kids and we were not allowed to watch TV during the week. We could only watch it on the weekend. And then we would fight over who got to watch which movie in what order and everything. But I never chose my own films. Like she just sort of came and went, this is what I've chosen for the family for the week.
I just want to go back really quick.
Yeah, go.
I get bored at work. Other than that, and there's some paralysis there. And I do get some paralysis at home, like just not what project do I start first? But I'll find something to do. You know what I mean? I sit on the couch nearly every night. Like, what should we watch tonight? What should we watch? Unless we were watching some sort of series and we're like, oh, we can watch the next 2 episodes of whatever. That is a time where I get bored. Like, I've looked through Netflix every night for the last 3 months. It's the same stuff. There's nothing there. There is some frustration of like, now what am I going to do? Right? I had this activity so I wouldn't be bored. Now I'm going to turn it off and I'm going to be bored. And it also has to do with having someone to do something with. I'm not great at being alone. That's when I
Neither is
really,
Greg. And
I'm not great at
I
being
eat.
alone. I need people around me.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
need that interaction. Um,
I need to be alone. I feel like I have people around me all the
I don't
time.
mind being alone, but then if left to my own devices, like I'll get into some funky time time blind stuff. Like, whoa, I need someone to help set some structure around what I'm doing, or else it just goes into this weird surreal space.
Rudy, can you take any of your home projects to work during a time like this?
some, yeah, and I've managed to take some things that I know I could work on at work.
Yeah.
One was just
What
putting a new grip on a golf club, but I did it at
what
work.
if you did like I mean, so you're saying I can't just sit still, I can't there's so
And here's the thing, you know, as a city employee, I'm going to be there 8 hours. I'm going to be there 8 hours. And there are days where I'm like, how in God, I'd almost just call in sick. I could do so much more here. It's boring. Like, I love the golf course, but in midsummer, I'm running 1,000 miles an hour. It's fantastic. There's so much to do. And then the next day, there's so much to do, so much to do. But we're sitting in a garage, a really big garage. I can't clean carts anymore. I can't, I've cleaned all the sprinklers I need to, I've done everything. I'm just waiting now until the snow goes away and it's a little warmer. We can go out on the course and actually do. But it's this way every winter. I'm trying to fill my time. I'm like, and I'm talking to myself at night, like when you go in tomorrow, why don't you spend take a half hour, do some push-ups instead of sitting and having donuts and maybe a breakfast burrito and watching the news for an hour and a half.
Oh man,
And
I would
it's
have a
it's
hard
not
time
every
picking up
morning we're doing
push-ups.
that, but like it's so it, it's so cliche, like cops sitting around, going out and sitting around having donuts, or Parks and Rec sitting around because you can't go outside or do anything, but you got to be there at 6 o'clock. And I'm eating donuts. Someone's left someone's brought in candy that they had left over. I mean, it's not healthy, right? We all kind of know it. And I'm knowing that it's kind of so boring for me right now. I'm every night before I'm like, what can I do tomorrow? What can I do tomorrow? Maybe I can walk around the course. Maybe I could do push-ups during that time. Maybe I wind up on my phone,
What about
like
crocheting?
something. I got to find something.
well, so there's this
I
thing.
do bring a crossword occasionally, like the Sunday crossword that I work on daily. It's just sitting around somewhere, and I'll bring that and do a crossword.
What
Um,
about like thinking about in terms of like intrinsic motivation? Like, are there mindset shifts that you can kind of play around with or challenge yourself? I wonder if I could kind of sit here and engage for 10 minutes, or because I think that like one of the titles for this is boredom triggers high stress response in impulsive people, and I do appreciate your point, Sarah, about that word impulsive, and I agree.
Oh,
But like is there something that we can do to start exercising a muscle that will be more um I don't know, put us in that less stress response. For
well,
example, my kids are younger, and so like sitting with my 5-year-old and just really engaging rather than like be like, yeah, I just moved. Okay, you go, while I'm multitasking on other things. It's like, can I be totally present in this moment and make that more vivid, make that moment more vivid, the things in that moment more vivid, to where that starts becoming more alive and interesting for me rather than like this, I know this game, this is boring, what are the other things that I need to be doing? Can I challenge myself to be in a present, be present and make that more interesting for myself? I'm and and it's interesting. It's challenging because my brain, I haven't exercised that muscle like ever.
So what would be your intrinsic motivators to get that to be more enjoyable, a game that you've played a million times, for example, checkers
Yeah, we're big into Candyland right now.
or
Connect Four,
Candyland?
stuff like that. Yeah, it's noticing my daughter and how she's interacting with the game and appreciating that and the how precious that is and elevating the meaningfulness of that.
But I also think boredom is also a muscle. I mean, I think boredom is a muscle too. And being okay to like take a breath, walk around. What I don't know what it is like. I mean, because my version of stepping into that next space of something that I consider incredibly boring is meditation. I know meditation will help me in 5 bajillion ways. I know that. The idea of sitting there, breathing, and hearing my own breath in my own head for a period of time is tough. And then I look at Sarah like at her the smile she's got on her face now because I know it's worth it. I know it, but it's a muscle, right? It's a muscle to quiet that self-talk that is constantly in my head, to quiet, to be and to be
I'm gonna stop you.
to be
I
okay
bet
in that.
you already do at some point in your life quiet your mind and that muscle of that, do that.
No, I can guarantee you I don't. I used to.
Anything? So when
No,
you
not right
when you
now.
wash your hair,
No, I'm thinking all the time. I have a piece of paper and a pen right outside the shower. I get my most brilliant ideas in the shower. Are you kidding me? That's a vibrant time. The shower ideas are the best ideas. That is fantastic.
so I know.
I would not do that.
You're
But
gonna end up meditating
and if I'm in the car, I'm listening to a podcast, like I have chatter in my head all of the time. But I did used to do Bikram yoga, which I would just fight for my life in the class, which meant that it
Yeah, you
turned
said
everything
that.
off.
That's right.
Yeah. So, but I know I can do it. I have had glimpses of doing it. It's just not comfortable. It's not an ability.
Does it
It's
trigger a high stress response when you sit there and try to meditate?
it triggers a stupid response. Like I'm like, this is stupid.
Which for me is high stress. I
Well,
never
for
want anyone
me,
calling me
it's the
stupid.
exact same. It's impatience
Yeah.
because I have a lot of impatience, and for me to shut it down, the only thing you talk about yoga, the only thing that enables me to really shut it down is yoga. And the reason being is we all know that unless you're focused, you're never going to make it in a hot class. It's so difficult.
you're
You
gonna die.
have to focus. And there are parameters, there's guardrails, it feels like, and there's a system. And so that's easy to follow. It's easier to focus in that case because you're going down this path. And once you do it and do it and do it, that path that path is clear. Your ability to shut everything down and only focus on yourself in that hour and a half, whatever it is. But aside from that, Sarah, my brain too never stops.
But I don't think to that end, like I wonder, actually, I don't think, I wonder for those people, because there are those people, right, that do not have the voice in their heads, that do that, right? They do, are they super bored like all the time because they don't have that? Or is it just quiet and it's used and that's just normal? Or like, I don't know what to do without the chatter
How do
in my
they know
brain.
what to do next?
I think
if they're
part of
not
that is
talking to them?
that's their normal. Not
Right.
knowing
But
anything.
so, but I just wonder, like this idea of meditation or something that, it's like you hear people say, well, you've got to empty your mind. And I was like, well, I guess it's a lot easier if there's not someone talking to you in there.
Yeah, can you bring a trash truck, please? Back it up to my head and let me
That's
just
where like
for like 2
yoga
days just
nidra.
dump all the trash. I mean, how's that going to happen?
Right.
Yoga nidra is interesting because it's like it's yoga, but it's like a guided meditation.
What's yoga nidra?
Yoga nidra is more of like a guided meditation where you'll kind of someone will be kind of painting a picture or kind of facilitating your
Man, I
meditation.
struggle though, Michael, with those guided meditations because literally I'm like, ugh, your voice annoys me. Are you
Right,
kidding me? Did you
totally.
really just say that?
Totally.
There
Could
is
we
that.
go a little faster? How about we
Right,
pick up the
right.
pace? I'm so judgy. So yes, I guess
Yeah.
that is a stress response. So I just don't do it. I don't do those things, I guess. I don't know.
Mhm. There are also like sound baths or like where it's more vibration type stuff where
Oh, someone said we should go into one of those places and float.
Yes.
And I was
I've done
like, no, that sounds
It's great.
horrifying.
It's great.
I want to do
Is it?
that.
It's great.
I've never done it.
I've done it twice. It's really good.
what's your
Tell
experience?
us more.
You're in like an egg, like a big sort of egg, and I'm kind of claustrophobic, so it was a little difficult,
Yeah.
but
Are you
there-
naked?
Naked?
I think I was naked. Yeah. I was naked in my own pod.
Yeah, I think it's in a room. So like you go into
And
the
you're
room.
in a room in your own pod, and you get into this pod, and you're in the water, and if you go in with the mindset of like, I mean, I didn't know what to expect. This is at least 7-8 years ago. Just like, I need this. Just try and focus. Try and calm your body and see how things go.
Did
And
you fall asleep?
I didn't fall asleep.
Mm.
Mm-mm.
Can
But
you drown if you
it
fall
felt-
asleep?
I know, I would think so.
Maybe.
No, probably
But that's
not.
a fear. I think that's kind of a fear. It's a really interesting experience. And it's really good. It helps quiet things. But you have to kind of go in with that mindset of like, you got to try and just breathe and let go. Breathe
think-
and let go what you can. You're still thinking. I know Krista would be like, Jesus, get me.
I would like rearrange things. No, but I think what's so interesting about that too, though, Jason, is I just lost it because I'm menopause. Gosh darn it. I just lost it.
I have menopause too. It's contagious.
About
And that
meditating or
concludes
being in the
today's-
water, being in the pod, being naked.
I'm bored now. I have menopause. I'm bored.
No, I actually do think that there would be some fear for me for being in a place where all my thoughts just really did just stop. Like, and it was super.
And no pen and paper.
And no pen and paper and an egg and being enclosed, and either that or I just have to fall asleep. So I don't know. Like,
Yeah, I need
that
the
seems
drowning
really
question
intense
answered.
to me.
You have the
Seems-
capability. I mean, my brain's going all the time, all the time.
If Mork can do it, you can do it.
And
That is
you-
today's
I
Gen
think
X
you
reference.
really can. You can do it. I mean, you definitely can do it.
But if you have to, I don't know, the focus. It's the idea of focusing on I guess on nothingness. Like that's what I was saying when we'll talk later in another episode about, this whole idea of of shared consciousness or telepathy or some of these other things that I know we're going to get into later in the season. But, one of the things that they do say in order to do that is that you've got to empty your mind. You've got to empty your brain and sort of be able to be open. And so, but that for me gamifies it. Like the thought that there is something at the other end. It's not just like, we're going to go sit in an egg and see what happens. But there's a thing that you're looking to connect with in meditation.
And it's boring for you. It's just straight up boring for you.
Okay, so I'm thinking
That would be
I don't
boring
like-
for you. Getting into
Well,
a
let's ask
pod.
Sarah because she's our meditation person.
Well, I don't know if I have anything to say about that, but you guys made me think of two things, and I know we're running out of time, right, Michael? Who's in charge of time?
No, we've got like a couple minutes, but we've been like,
Oh.
what is time? What is time?
When you're never
So the
get bored.
boredom anxiety response sounds like fear. And then you said, once you gamify and give boredom a purpose, is what I heard in my head,
Uh-huh.
it's okay.
Mhm.
The end.
Well, it certainly makes it easier to tackle.
That's like really interesting to me. And then I think I told you guys this too, that I have been loving the hot flashes of menopause because they give me an opportunity. I'm dead serious. I sound like a crazy person. They give me an opportunity, a window into my youngest self and the things that upset or dysregulated my youngest self that I've long since forgotten bother me. And so my sister actually said, well, no, yeah, it's an adrenaline. You're having an adrenaline spike when blah, blah, blah. And I thought, oh, that's what it is. It's that I'm having these little mini adrenaline spikes that I've managed for so long. So, for example, you're walking down the street, someone's walking towards you, and you do the little dance of which way to go. That might give me a hot flash, but it's not really awkward, so it's so subconscious as a response that's a stress response right there. And my sister's like, yeah, no, it's adrenaline. And I thought it is. And then I tripped over something, had an adrenaline response, thought, okay, where's the hot flash? And didn't have a hot flash. So it's not that. But anyway, what it is, every time I have one, it's a clue. If I look back at what triggered it, it usually surprises me. And I think, oh, it's funny that I didn't realize that bothered me. Because I've gotten so used to just going through and pushing through and doing it.
So I have a person I follow on TikTok who has sort of stumbled upon her working through her trauma responses as a 54-year-old woman, right? So, and she's been talking a lot about how she just didn't, these things that she's just lived with for years, and it's like how she's operated. She didn't know that they were trauma responses, and that now that she's recognizing her trauma from her youth, she sees these she sees them as trauma responses. And I think that there's probably, understand this when I say this, there's probably some overlap in my ADHD responses and trauma responses but it is, this idea, and this is a whole other episode that we could probably talk about, this idea of really trying to figure out who you are in your 50s, based on unwinding trauma versus ADHD response, because there are so many times where, I'll see someone else online who's like, I've got ADHD and this is what I do. And I go, oh, so is that why I do that too? That I just never connected before now. And I'm sure the trauma stuff is the same exact thing, right? Like you sort of go like, oh, wait. And so it's just, to me, all of this, unwinding it and trying to figure out the source and trying to talk about what you did, you Sarah, it's like, what is that thing of my childhood that maybe is the thing that's popping up? Like, I was so interesting when you said that. There are times where I'm really grateful to be able to do this work in my 50s. And there's times when I'm flat out angry that I'm having to do it in my 50s. And it feels like sometimes I'm all of a sudden like a baby with myself, which is weird.
I kind of like that part. That's what I'm leaning into and making it this joyful thing. That's why back to the impulsive versus spontaneous. I'm done with all the labels, and I just want to be that weird little kid that I was, and at the same time be accountable for my impact in the world. So not childish, but childlike.
Yeah.
I think that's probably a great way to end.
I love it. Love it.
That's Sarah's role in the team. Strong endings.
Oh, thanks.
Stick the landing.
Stick the landing.
Mary Lou Retton.
Second Gen X reference of the day.
All right, now, Michael, you got to take us out and thank everybody because you're best at it. Oh, Rudy's got it.
Thank you once again, everyone, for listening to This Is How My Brain Works. For Krista, Michael, and Sarah, I'm Jason. We look forward to talking with you next time.
If you like this episode of This Is How My Brain Works, please like, subscribe, and share. If you'd like more info on the hosts, guests, and topics, check out the show notes. Thanks for listening.